Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland, but we should also point out that this brewery does have English roots, so it's kind of half English, half Scottish I guess we could say. But this brewery has featured on the channel a number of times before. We've had some really nice beers from them over the last few years, a good few different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're most definitely best known for their different kinds of German style beers. Now, the one that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases. It's a style that I have had from this brewery on a few occasions before, one that I know they can do very well, but this particular beer actually has a little bit of a more kind of modern twist to it, and one that I haven't had within this style category before, and I'm really quite curious to see how that turns out. So, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we're going to head a little bit east of me here in Clackmannanshire over to Edinburgh. We're going to go to Leith to be specific, and we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Donzoko Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Talus Pils. It comes in at 5% ABV, and this one is obviously a Pilsner lager. So yeah, this should be really quite cool actually. It's been a wee while I think since we reviewed a Donzoko beer, and I think the last one we reviewed from these guys was one that was brewed in England still. So yeah, these guys are originally from Hartlepool in England, but have recently relocated to Leith in Edinburgh. But yeah, a 5% Talus hopped Pilsner lager here. This should be really quite nice actually. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Donzoko Brewing Company before, and we will definitely add more to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up, and failing that you can of course go and check out the the country playlist I should say. You'll find this one in both the Scottish playlist and the English playlist, because like I say, this beer does have dual roots these days. And you can of course check out the playlist of beers from other countries in there as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Donzoko Brewing Company. So, Donzoko Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are originally from Hartlepool in England, and the company is headed by Rhys Hugill, who started homebrewing back in about 2014. So he studied chemistry at Newcastle University, and then he later went to the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, and it was during his time in Germany that he developed a love of the different German beer styles. But he was due to start studying his masters, but he decided that he wanted to do something else, and after having had some success with his home brewing, he decided that it was time to found his own company, and with the help of savings and grants from Newcastle University and Hartlepool Council, he got this up and running properly in 2017. So originally these guys were brewing the wort at another local brewery and then transporting it in bags to their own premises where the fermentation took place, but they were gradually building up their operations in Hartlepool. But over the course of 2020, Rhys invested quite a little bit in the brewery, but this was kind of put on hold because of all the things that went on with the COVID-19 pandemic. So things went on pause for a little while. For a period of time they were brewing their Northern Hellas under contract at Gypsy Hill Brewery down in London, but in the summer of 2021 they relocated the brewery to Edinburgh, and they partnered up with New Barnes Brewery in Leith, and all of the production, from what I understand, now takes place there. But as of July 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced about 75 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and in addition to lagers, they were mainly just producing different kinds of lager back in the day. There's a number of pale ales in there, IPAs, they've done some black IPAs, and like I say, you've got a huge selection of different German stuff in there as well. I saw they produced a Goza recently, so we'll need to have a little look at that. But over the years this brewery has gotten better and better, and we have seen a good few breweries in England actually having a look brewing different lagers and things like that. Utopia, Braybrook and Donzoko probably are the three best known ones that are producing a big amount of lager, but Lost and Grounded of course are producing a lot too, and of course Kernel in London we're producing a lot of these beers too. Here in Scotland of course a lot of the focus is on New Barns these days. We're doing a lot of lagers and paleos and really focusing on the sessionable type beers. So yeah, to partner up with New Barns as these guys have done is a very good move for them, I would say. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Donzoko Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and actually have a little look at this beer itself. So the first thing I'm going to point out to you is that this one is a 500ml can, a good half litre, which is what you always get in Germany. But you can see the artwork on this one is very, very nice. They've done several Pilsners actually with different kind of hops in them, and this is just the one. When I was home in the motherland of Scotland this time, this just happened to be a new release. I think I bought this beer at the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchant over in Dunfermline. He always seems to get the new things from New Barns and Donzoko and stuff like that. But yeah, like we said, a 5% single hop Pilsner lager. Talus originates in the US. It comes in with about 16% alpha acid, if I remember correctly. It's a daughter hop of Sabro, so it still has a little bit of that kind of coconutty character to it, but it gives you a nice little bit of a kind of pink grapefruity sort of thing. I actually can't remember what I paid for this beer, but yeah, you know, I wanted to have something from Donzoko because it has been about 2 years or so since I last reviewed a beer from these guys. So yeah, plain silver top on the can there. As I say, I can't really remember what I paid for this one, but yeah, it looks pretty damn nice, I have to say. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. The Talus Pils from Donzoko Brewing Company in Edinburgh. I'm really curious about this one. So let's do this. A little bit of smoke on the opening there as we get it out. And there we are. So that's a good chunk of the beer out and into the glass. And we'll just have a little look at this. So before the head disappears then, you can see that this beer poured with somewhere between a quarter and a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would have said, perfect white head. It doesn't look kind of creamily tinty, but you can see the bubbles are kind of medium size in this one. They've got a little bit of bumpiness to them actually. I could well have put this into my Pilsner Urquell Stein if I'd really wanted to, but yeah, never thought of that at the time. So yeah, the beer itself does look very nice and pretty much as you would expect from the style. So you can see that head has just faded away to be a nice kind of thin foamy layer. If I had put it in the Pilsner Urquell glass, it probably would have retained its head a little bit better. So yeah, that's it. But yeah, around the edge of the glass you can see there's a nice little ring there, and there's just a few little wispy bits on top of the head there. But it looks very good. So yeah, in terms of the colour of this one, as you would expect from the style, it's poured a lovely kind of pale golden straw colour, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass and a few little ones just going up toward the bottom of that head there. But overall, as I say, it does look very, very nice. Yeah, so remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. But when it comes to Pilsners, it's not very often that you are going to come across a barrel aged version of this particular style. You can see it's got a lovely little bit of natural haze to it. Even if we wipe away the kind of condensation around the edge of the glass there, it does have that lovely little bit of natural haze to it. So appearance wise, nothing particularly surprising about this beer when you consider what style it is. Let's have a little look at the aroma then and see what it's all about. I'm really curious about this, as I've said many times during this video so far. Oh yeah, this is really interesting, and I love things like this, you know. The beer itself, it really has that check. it's somewhere in the middle between the Czech and the German Pils for me. Remember, the Pilsner as a style, of course, was developed in the Czech city of Pilsen, which at the time of development, around 1840, was it 1860, I forget, it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and about half the population were Czechs, about half the population were German. So, yeah. The brewer who developed the original Pilsner was a Bavarian, if I remember correctly, and that was what became Pilsner Urquell, or Plzeňský Prazdroj, as the Czechs call it. Probably butchered that pronunciation, but yeah, he only remained in the town for like 2 years or something, and the locals didn't like him, so he was thrown out. But yeah, the Pilsner, the original Pilsner, is of course Pilsner Urquell, original source Pilsner. But yeah, this beer does have, for me, the main difference between the German and the Czech Pilsners in the modern times is that the Czech ones are always a little bit more kind of yeasty and kind of creamy and things like that, whereas the German ones are a bit cleaner and more kind of crisp and dry. I think that's a fair statement to make. But this beer, just from its aroma, kind of strikes me as being sort of somewhere in the middle. It's got a little bit of that yeastiness and kind of almost like farmhousey, crackery character to it, but it does have a little bit of the German cleanliness to it in there as well. This is really interesting, but of course on top of that you've got a big floral component and lots of juicy, fruity character from the Talus. So yeah, let's try and break this aroma down then and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth, because it really is lovely, I have to say. So the backbone of the beer, absolutely, you have a little bit of that kind of fresh white bready bread crust. That is your backbone. On top of that, you get a little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing. A little touch of woodiness in there as well. Yeah. So yeah, and like I say, there is a little bit of woodiness to this one. Yeah, bread crust. A little bit of cracker, a little bit of woodiness in there. On top of that, I get a little hint of like a wholemeal brown bready character, but then above that it's lots of kind of fluffy and fresh white bread, and at the back of the nose you do get a little bit of that kind of drier Pilsner malty character coming out of this one. It's quite hard to detect though, because the fruitiness and the floral component of the hops in this beer really dominate quite a little bit. But yeah, above that fluffy white bread, you start to get, there's a little touch of a kind of biscuity note out of this one. Yeah, there's a little bit of biscuity sweetness in there. There's a tiny little bit of like honey or something like that, just a slightly stronger kind of sugary note in there. But yeah, I think little tiny touch of like honey or honeycomb, McVitie's digestive biscuit, white bread, little touch of brown bread, cracker, a wee bit of wood, and then the bread crust. But at the back of the nose, you really do start to get more of the kind of crisp, dry Pilsner malty character coming out of the beer, and also some yeastiness as well. You can smell there's a little bit of a bready, kind of yeasty character coming out of this one, and it's that bready, yeasty, slightly farmhousey type thing coming out of this one that is really more reminiscent of the Czech unpasteurized lagers, if you like. But of course you will find a number of unpasteurized Brauhaus lagers in Germany too. But yeah, the malty and yeasty side of this beer is really interesting when it comes to the aroma. Now the hoppy side of things is really quite unusual with this one. I will say straight away, oh not straight away, I'll say it, you do get a lot of coconut out of this one, and that's the Talus. I can imagine if you did this with Sabro it would be even more, because you know, for me the coconutty qualities of Talus are a little bit less than the parent hop Sabro, but still that coconutty character is kind of mixing in with the sort of bready notes and things like that too. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together from that perspective, I think, is really quite interesting. But when it comes to the green component, for me, you do have a very slight little bit of earthiness in there. You've got a big kind of wet floral component to it. Yes, a little bit of earthiness, a little touch of kind of herbal character. As I say, quite a lot of floral aromaticity, but it's still quite wet. Around the front of the nose you get a wetter grassiness coming out of this one too. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is is really quite interesting. But the more that you smell of this beer, the more floral aromaticity you get out of it. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, it is, if you know this hop, it is kind of as you would expect. It's got a lovely little bit, as I say, that kind of brighter pink grapefruit in there. There are little hints of like apricot or peach as well, so I get a little bit of a sharper peach and a wee bit of a kind of apricot, and then also a wee touch of yeah, there's also a wee touch of a kind of just a more, it's almost got a little bit of lime or something to it, which is kind of interesting. But underneath that, of course, you are getting this kind of distinctive coconutty type vibe coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really, really nice, and it is pretty interesting, I have to say. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy, just enjoy the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them. But I think we should have a wee look at this one now and see how we go. We'll take a sip of it first and then we'll put the rest in a wee bit later on, because I think the glass could well overflow. But let's do this. This one is the Talus Pils, a 5% Talus hopped Pilsner beer from Donzoko Brewing Company, originally of Hartlepool in the northeast of England, but now of Leith in Edinburgh. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh, that's really very nice. Yeah, I'll tell you something. The beer, when you think about the aroma, if you're looking at the aroma of this beer and then tasting it, the aroma gives the impression that the hops are going to be a lot more kind of, they're going to kind of just dominate the beer, but they don't. The beer, it still retains what it gives you, everything you would want from the Pilsner as a style, the drinkability, the crispness, and all this kind of stuff, the nice kind of green component, but it just gives you that wee bit more of a kind of modern American touch, if you like. This is a really nicely done beer. It is a really nicely done one, but what I would say is that if you don't like coconut and you're not a great, or you don't like grapefruit, you're probably not going to enjoy this one that much, because those two flavours are pretty prominent in this one. But I think that is very, very nicely done. It's a massive thumbs up from me. I can imagine that my friend Peter of The Clueless Drinker will enjoy this one. He loves grapefruit, and like me, he loves his German lager beers. So yeah, this is one, if Peter does end up watching this review, dude, this is one you need to try. This will be right up your street. He's a great fan of Schufferhofer. And this is probably, if you like Schufferhofer, you probably will enjoy this particular Pilsner as well. Completely different beer, of course. I think that's like a grapefruit Radler, if I remember correctly, or a grapefruit kind of Hefeweizen mix. But yeah, if you like that, you probably will enjoy the sort of flavours you're getting out of this one. But yeah, to Donzoko, really nicely done beer once again. Not surprised, to be honest with you, considering what we've had from them before. Their Northern Helles, which is probably their biggest selling beer, is absolutely worth trying. It's probably, yeah, it's definitely up there with the best Helles style lagers brewed in Scotland, definitely. And it, talking about the wider UK as well, that's fair enough to say too. But yeah, lovely beer, this one. Let's try and break it down then and just describe it a wee bit more in depth. So, the backbone of this beer, I will say this one, it doesn't do anything unexpected in terms of the style or what we've gathered from the aroma. It's just really nicely done, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of this beer, you absolutely have a little bit of that kind of fresh, white bready bread crust there. It gets drier and more grainy the further into the aftertaste that you go. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you do get that nice little touch of woody character coming out of the beer. Above that, there's a little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream crackery sort of thing as well, which is great. And yeah, as I say, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is just really nice. The backbone, the sort of drier and more grainy backbone that this beer has, I think, is pretty awesome. So, in terms of the actual kind of malty, the things above that, so as I say, you've got the bread crust, the cracker, the wee bit of woodiness further forward. Above that kind of crackery layer, you do get a little bit of a wholemeal brown bready kind of character, which is a little bit surprising for the style. I don't often find myself saying that about pilsners, but I do find there's a little bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character in there. And then you've got the white bready layer. Now the white bready layer is quite interesting because you can feel the kind of coconutty influence of the Talus just creeping into it, which isn't something that I really expected, to be honest with you. But yeah, the white bready layer above the brown bready layer is a little bit more kind of taller and a bit more, it's got a little bit more presence to it. I think we can definitely say that. And it is, as I say, really very nicely done. So yeah, you can feel that kind of white bready character in there with the little bit of kind of coconutty character, and then above that you start to get a kind of Pilsner malty characters coming out. So if you go further back on that middle third of your palate, you're definitely getting more of the kind of Pilsner malty, kind of dry, crisp sort of things, but they kind of stick up a little bit. But then going further forward on that top part of the middle third of your palate, you do get a wee bit of you do get a little bit of kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of this one. So yeah, in the dead centre of your palate you can feel there's a little bit of a concentrated sweet biscuity kind of note coming out of it, and then above that you have a little bit more, so yeah, you've got that kind of concentrated biscuity sort of thing in the dead centre of your palate, which is a little bit sweeter. But as you move further out toward the edges of that middle third of your palate, then yeah, you have a little bit more of a, you do have a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's, you do get a little bit more of that McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of it. But yeah, the Pilsner malty crispness is the one out of those three flavours there that kind of dominates in a sense. But yeah, I think we've said everything that we really need to about that middle third of your palate. The only other thing I would add to it is that it gets a little bit more woody the further into the aftertaste that you go, and of course that kind of promotes the kind of coconut flavours too. So yeah. So yeah, for me, that's the middle third of the palate. So the back third of the palate then, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a lovely little bit of a kind of fresh white bready build up in there. So yeah, that absolutely comes out of the beer for me. So fresh white bready build. There's a little bit of brown bread in the base, but then that kind of white bready character, and then it's topped off by the kind of crisp Pilsner malts in there. That's the border region. But as I've always said, on the back third of the palate you'll get similar flavours, they'll just come out at slightly different intensities. But remember that general trend that you'll get more dry and bitter flavours further back on the palate, the sweeter flavours further forward. So on the back third of the palate then you get the kind of bread crusty character, which is even drier and even more kind of crisp. So that bread crusty character is there. The cracker is there as well. You've got the wholemeal brown bready character as well, which sits above that. It's a little bit more kind of as I say, you've got a little bit more of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character, a little bit taller and a little bit more airy than the fluffy white bread character above that, which is even fluffier and things like taller and light and airy again. And then the crisp Pilsner malts just push their way over the back as well, which I think is really very, very nice. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together is really, really nice. So yeah, for me, above all of that, you start to get some of the yeasty character out of the beer. And for me, the yeasty side of this one is quite interesting. So above all of that, you've got this kind of brown, farmhousey, woody, crackery sort of bready note coming out of the beer. It's got a little touch of a kind of honeycomb wrapping to it. I always get a little bit of honeycomb from yeasty flavours for some reason. But yeah, you can definitely feel that yeasty character sitting above everything else on the back third of the palate. But yeah, the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, it's good stuff. I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of the beer, to be honest with you. On to the hoppy side of things then, the green component. In the back corners of your palate, you're absolutely getting a little bit of earthiness in there, but as you move further forward, you get this kind of deep, dank, kind of pine resinous character. Now remember, Pilsners will use a good little bit of early addition hopping to give you that bitterness. Pilsner Urquell, of course, was 30 IBUs, and some modern Pilsners are even higher than that. You know, Genstale Kellerpils, which is a little bit of a staple, is going to give you more bitterness than that. But yeah, nice little bit of earthiness in there, a little bit of herbal character, and as you push further forward toward the kind of front corners of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of floral aromaticity there, but yeah, deeper dank pine resin underneath, and then the spicy floral aromaticity on the front corners of your palate. But round the front curve of your tongue, it's a little bit lighter and grassy, and then yeah, you get that wee bit more kind of zestiness out of it too. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really, really nice. So, yeah, on the, kind of grassy side of things, then you really get a lot of zestiness out of this beer the further into the aftertaste that you go. But let's look at the front third of your palate then, and the kind of fruity side of things to round off the tasting. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there, a little bit of brown bread, a little bit of white bread. Then the base of that, front third of your palate, a lovely little bit of kind of bread, as I say, lovely little bit of bread crust. In the base, again, a little bit of brown bread, and it's got a little bit of sweetness to it, the brown bread this time, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. But I would say between the bread and that, you have a little bit of this kind of coconutty character coming out, which is of course the trademark, or one of the trademarks of, or this defining characteristics, is what I'm looking for, of the Talus hop. So quite a nice little bit of that coming out of this one. But yeah, shame. I kind of wish I got a second can of this. This always happens when I review lagers. I wish I had a second bottle of it, because these just go down very, very well. But yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get that stronger straight up grapefruity note, but as you move further forward, it kind of mellows out and gives you that brighter pink grapefruity character. And then yeah, as you move further forward in this one, you maybe get a little slight hint of like peach and apricot and stuff, and there's maybe just a tiny little bit of a lemon limey character behind the very kind of front tip of the tongue. I think that's fair to say about the fruity side of this beer. But yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense is really quite nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me there. Yeah, I like this one. I do like how that pieces together. So yeah, I think that's everything we can really say about the flavour of this beer. But like I say, very impressed with this one, and Donzoko have done a really good job balancing, keeping this beer a pilsner with this big, punchy American hop. It's great. But yeah, let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. For me, absolutely, it's a light-bodied beer, which is what you want from a lager. It's kind of mid to top end of light-bodied. Carbonation has a nice little bit of crispness to it, but the beer still retains a bit of smoothness and that slight little bit of oily slickness, which is good. But you do have a little bit of bitterness to this one. It's at least 30 IBUs. I wouldn't be surprised if it was pushing the 40, to be honest with you. If you told me it was actually 40, technically, wouldn't be surprised at that. So yeah, you get that nice little bit of pine resinous character just lingering into the aftertaste. But yeah, the malt base, as you said, a little bit of grainy dryness in there, bready character, and then above that, you've got some really nice kind of biscuity, sweet characters coming out of it. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really nice in that sense. But yeah, lovely big kind of oily, fruity characters too as well. The big kind of resinous, citrusy, grapefruity sort of thing with this one is really very, very nice. So like I say, it gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about Donzoko Talus Pills. So yeah, that's that. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Donzoko Brewing Company as well. Definitely cool to have these guys in Scotland these days too, and you know, be a little bit more accessible. That's pretty damn awesome. But yeah, really happy to have tried this one. I think this is a really interesting beer, and up there with the standards that we've had from Donzoko Brewing Company before. So yeah, big thumbs up to them. Check out my social media, check out Donzoko Brewing Company's social media. Try the Northern Hellas, which is their kind of flagship beer, and try the more experimental things as well. Those are always pretty damn good. But until the next time, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, and I'll catch you soon. The Talus Pills from Donzoko Brewing Company, originally from Hartlepool in England, but now in Leith in Edinburgh. Slàinte, Skål, and cheers.